I'm going to start recording. Awesome. So today, or this morning at least, we're going to be hearing from Devis Tuia. Devis is a professor at EPFL in Switzerland, and actually is also Benny, one of our amazing instructors, postdoc advisor. And Devis has been one of the leaders in this space for a very long time. Specifically in the remote sensing space, he's been pretty pivotal and has been running this very long-standing and pretty widely renowned workshop at CVPR called Earth Vision, which for any of you who are working on remote sensing problems that are in this space might actually be a really nice venue for you to potentially publish future work. But beyond that, Devis and I were co-authors recently on this large-scale nature communications review looking at machine learning for wildlife conservation. And he has a really amazing lab working on a bunch of really diverse applications in Switzerland. I'm so happy that you're here, Devis. And yeah, I'm excited to hear your talk.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Good morning, everybody. Is it morning for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it still bedtime for you? Okay. Someone is around. Good. Great. Is Benny there? Difficult to see.
Not yet. I guess he didn't wake up yet.
So I can say whatever horrible thing about him until he comes. No. Okay. So good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, even though just in a screen. But I'm sure you're having a blast in California, and I'm really pleased to be here and talking with you about machine learning, remote sensing, and ecology. And yeah, I mean, I will also be very happy to see you at Earth Vision one of these days, if one day you decide to join us there. So Sarah, just for me, 45 minutes, fine?
Yeah, perfect. So you have an hour-long slot, and so 45 minutes and then questions is great.
Cool. Okay, so let's start. So the story I want to tell you, it's obviously related to biodiversity crisis. So I guess you have been listening, hearing a lot about it in your own research, and also in these 2 weeks. This must be a third week of summer school right now, and so I don't think I really need to discuss much about this problem of the biodiversity crisis. We are all very well aware that this is like a major problem that we really need to act upon, because a large amount of species is at the risk of extinction nowadays. And I mean, I know Tanya has been talking to you, so I'm pretty sure she has been talking about the red list. And so the story that we want to achieve is to get out of this gray line that we can see here. Can you see my mouse on the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So we want to get out from this gray line and potentially go back to the green line. That will be the very nice where biodiversity is preserved. And this, it's for a bunch of reasons, but of course, those that for sure will ring with you will be the fact that biodiversity is very, very important for protecting our health. There are many plants and many animal products are used in medicine and for food security. So animals clean our soils, they purify the air, the waters, the plants as well. So I mean, we want to have a very rich and biodiverse planet, because that's very good for sustaining the life of the planet, of course, but also the life of all of us as a society. Okay, so if we now zoom in a little bit about conservation, which is the topic of the talk today, I mean, the story I want to tell you, it's a little bit how we can do our tiny little part in all this debate about preserving biodiversity by supporting people that are actually out in the field and protecting animal populations. Okay, so I mean, in the last almost 10 years, we've been working in my lab in supporting ranger, in supporting ecologists into, you know, making the protection of animals in national reserves right. And you know, we attacked it through two angles. So the first being that that people on the ground tend to do a lot of things by hand, where there is a very strong potential for automatization. And also when there are digital data that are acquired, well, this data are then manually processed again. So which means that, you know, we can they can be sometimes year behind the processing of the data they have been acquiring. And I'm pretty sure Sarah has been talking a lot about it in how, you know, how we can support organizations to you know, be in line with their data, for example, when processing camera traps data. But I will not talk about camera traps today. My camera is not on the ground. My camera is up in the sky. So as you can see here in one of our campaigns in Namibia, we fly things that look like this. So this is an EB from SenseFly. And, you know, we make them fly and then try to detect and count and then extrapolate to population of animals. So this talk is as two big parts, and then a third that is a bonus. So the first one, we will look into this. They do everything by hand. So how can we do better data collection when we fly drones in reserve in Africa? And then the second part is it will be how can we process this data in a way that is efficient so that we keep up with the processing of all this data that have been collected. All right, so part one, let's go. And every time I will put these wonderful figures from our NatCom paper, mostly because they are absolutely beautiful and they kind of, you know, summarize the thing that I'm talking about. So this part of the talk is about sensor data and how we make them usable for computer vision applications that come after. And the place where most of it will happen, it's a little natural reserve that is located here in Namibia in the Kalahari, and it's called Crucicus. You can see their logo here. So that's a shameless advertisement for Crucicus in case you want to visit Namibia. It's a wonderful natural reserve, and we started in 2014 this research together. And you know, we met with the boss of Crucicus, and they were like, oh yeah, we have this reserve and we would like to know where our animals are and to count them efficiently. And we know you do remote sensing stuff. Can you help us? And we were like, of course, easy. That's what we do. So we were very, you know, very, how to say that? we were very bad. Like we had no idea what we were walking into. And basically we just gave them the card of course, no problem. Let us just fly there. And so the story is that we actually did fly there in 2014 and 2015 and then many times. And Benny just came back from Crucicus last month, and you know, we keep working with them and it's great. So it looks a little bit like that. So this is the reserve seen from a drone. And so we basically took a consumer camera as simple as possible and put it on a drone. Why the simple camera? Because you know, these beauties crash very often, and we don't want to put a $50,000 camera on a drone like that. And they break. I mean, again, if you have been working with camera traps, you know what I'm talking about. So we try to keep it as cheap as possible, and also because we want this to be then used when we are not there anymore. So we cannot really ask people to buy super expensive equipment. So we try to keep it as simple as possible and as cheap as possible, and to make sure that we can get to accurate results. Okay, all this looks very easy. I don't know if to your eyes it looks very easy, but if it does, I want to make an experiment. So and I'm not sure it's gonna work, but let's try. So please take your mobile phones. So you know, this beauty is here, and go to kahoot.it and wait for me there. So let's see if this thing works. So when you are on Kahoot, you can enter the pin that you can see here at the top of my screen. And okay, oh, we start having people. Please put a nickname that you can recognize yourself. Don't worry, this is semi-anonymous. It just goes on YouTube, and you just put your name, so it's fine. But no, we're just gonna play a little game. So I don't know how many of you are in the room, but I will just wait a little bit more. So we have 15 participants to this wildlife game we're gonna play, and we're gonna make it quickly. And so let me just explain what is gonna happen. Okay, you are the participant of a fantastic game where the aim is to answer a question you will see on screen, and you will have 4 possible answers, and each answer corresponds to a color. On your mobile phone, you will see these 4 same colors, and you basically click on the color of the answer you want to do. So it's very easy. It's okay. And basically, you will have to tell me something about what you see in some images. Are you ready?
Yeah. Sure.
God. Okay. Good morning. Are you ready?
Yeah. It is 9 a.m. Devis.
It's called Wildlife Master. Pay attention now. It's about. Okay. The first question is a quiz. So how many animals do you see in this image here? So if you think 0, you press the red on your mobile phone. If you think it's 2, you press the blue on your mobile phone. 4, the yellow, and 6, the green. Oh my God, it's working. It's working. All right. So, okay, most people got it wrong. The right answer was 2, as you can see. So we have 12 people who got it wrong, right? 7 people say 4, and 2 people who were very, very enthusiastic about animals, and they say 6. For the moment, the winner of the game is R. So R, can you just shave your hand? It's a competition, people. It's a competition. So.
Is it because she was fat?
Yeah. Are you ready? Are you ready? We go to question 2.
Yeah. I love games. I used to do this in this.
Okay, let's go. Question 2. Pay attention. Pay attention. The same question. Oh my God, this goes very fast. Maybe the question is too easy.
Everyone's hyper.
It's a terrible vantage point.
Oh, good.
I feel like
most people got it right. It was 5 animals. Very good. So, you know, Grant is talking in a couple of days, and he will tell you everything about gamification. But so for the moment, I'm just making a test about how things go. So let's see how go. Oh, very good. Good, Melis. Okay. We have 5 questions. We're being too slow. So how many animals do you see again? Huh.
Oh, it's getting harder.
So
Full send.
So, you know, the problem is that this is the kind of image we usually work with, not the ones you saw before. So.
Damn it, I got it wrong.
Probably did. Okay, most people got it wrong. Oh my God, we will have a big change in the leaderboard.
Like, go for speed.
So Devis, what your gamification needs is then you need to show the correct answer so people can learn.
But
It does.
That is what the correct.
No, like visualize it on the. You need to show us what the animals were that we missed so we can learn what to look for.
That's it. I don't know what happens if I click show media. So let me try. Yeah. Oh wow. So it's one here and one here under the book.
That's some bullshit.
Oh my gosh.
Projector.
You got it right.
Okay. Nobody cries. Let's
This is so fun.
Oh.
Princess of Darkness.
Paul, very well done. I'm proud of you.
No queen is the highest climber.
What? Oh my gosh. Because I was in dead last.
Yeah.
It's okay, I replaced you in dead last, so you're welcome.
Focus. Question 4. Focus.
Said that.
Oh, God, I don't know.
Wild guess. No, I don't know.
So now you need
What if
to add
there's like
all
white
Benny,
specks that I
which
can't
was
decide if that's like.
annotated.
Yeah, like in that first one.
I know it looks like a
What?
bird to me, but I feel like they're only
Yeah.
counting other
God
Oh my God. Anyone get that one?
Yeah, me too.
I'm right behind you.
The right answer is 0. And this is what
Anna,
happens
we're-
in most
Anna, we're neck and neck
countries,
for
my
13th
friends.
place at the moment.
Most
I'm like
images
have
are
been
like
behind
that.
Sarah for the past like 3 rounds.
Who's AA?
Yeah,
Oh,
let's
I'm
go.
behind
So let's see.
Oh,
Anton. Anton.
I'm with you.
Oh my God, it seems that we
Todd,
have,
you are
Okay. Now I want you to take a deep breath
Okay.
because it's the last one. So it's your last chance to,
It's gonna be
you
so
know,
many.
to win against Pod, because otherwise Pod will be the champion, and that's not. Sorry, Pod, whoever you are. I'm just raising up a little bit the stakes. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's go. And this is another
They're ready to count,
normal
right?
thing.
Ah.
So now you're actually seeing the full scene. Before you were seeing just the center, but now it's the full scene.
Oh, so we had to add them.
I don't know.
If I remembered, I would
I
add
could
them.
remember.
Fine.
Speed over accuracy.
I got the connection
Oh,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got the right answer.
The Wi-Fi sits down.
It literally just is telling me, we believe in you.
It's
Like
okay.
you're doing it
it's
wrong.
okay.
Very fast.
Well, I mean,
aggressive.
No one said it would be easy.
this kills a little bit the
Yeah.
topic about the
God damn
champion,
you.
I reckon.
Stupid
But
robot.
let's still, you still deserve the podium. So let me even put a mute.
Wow.
Some music. And we
That's one of the fun.
okay.
Wildlife costume.
Okay, so this was fun.
It was fun.
Okay, if you want to know where the 16 animals were, here they are. For the correct gamification outcomes. Yeah, here are the 16 animals, and you don't blame yourself if you didn't see them all. It's actually a very difficult question, but I mean, the story that I wanted to show, despite the fun moment of playing together, was to show you that these data are complicated. Like, it's not very simple because animals are super small. Most of the time, there is nothing to see, and your vision system needs to be strong. Which is the exact context of my next slide. And not only the animals are small and scarce, but the background, it's sometimes very, very tough as well. So these are different backgrounds that we have in the first footage of 2014. So I mean, this is one drone flight, and you get backgrounds that's different as this. You have animals of different species, and the problem is actually pretty complex. So we learn to be humble, and then we just embarked in 8 years of awesome research to make all these things work. And so the first thing that we did is, as every good computer vision expert will do, is to create a data set, of course. So this means that we had the images because we flew the drone in Namibia, and it was going fine. But what we lacked were the annotations, so the labels. No? And so the thing that we did is that we teamed up with a number of people, including what was called back in the day iRevolution, but now it's called AIDR. So it's at the QCRI, the Qatar Computing Research Institute, and we basically constructed an app that ran on a tablet, where people could simply annotate by just touching on the image where the animals would be. And then we use the AIDR network of volunteers to just, take these images and label them for us. And so we had roughly 26,000 images in that first flight, with roughly 1,000 animals, so not so many. And in 2 days, we could have every single one patch annotated by 5 persons, which was remarkable. And we didn't expect the response to be so strong. And it also allowed us to have a data set to start learning models and do some detection and vision. So the story is that the annotation looks a little bit like that. So here you can see several scribbles or polygons sometimes, depending on how people annotate. And every single scribble corresponds to one person. So knowing that multiple people annotated the same animal, like, where is my mouse? Like here, we have multiple scribbles and a polygon, tells us that, it's quite likely that that is an animal. While here, for example, we had just one annotation, that's something that wasn't an animal. And it also helped us to rule out annotations that were found by only one of our annotators, and we just kept those that were found by the majority. And this is what we did in 2014. It was very rough, and it served the purpose of what we had to do back in the day. But now there is a bunch of crowdsourcing projects around, and I just wanted to mention a couple of them because they're awesome. So there is the Wild Book, for example, where you can annotate whale sharks or manta rays and things like that. INAT, I'm pretty sure you know everything about it. Otherwise, Grant will tell you everything in a couple of days, or eBird, and so on. And they scale globally. So we're just doing our tiny little thing in Namibia, but actually these other portals are really scaling that up at the level of the entire world. And that's, for me, the real power of this type of approaches, is that they help everybody to contribute, and they give you back a bunch of data that maybe are not perfect, but they are right most of the time, if you do it well. Again, Grant will tell you everything about it. And it's not just data collection. If someone in the room is like machine learning enthusiast, I mean, there is a lot to be done even at this stage of crowdsourcing and data collection. I mean, there is a lot to be done in terms of which images are shown to the people, in terms that it remains interesting, and you need to choose images that are most confusing for the classifier. You can work on how the crowd behaves in order to rule out people who are having adversarial type of behaviors, or some people are good at birds, some people are good at plants, and maybe you want to use their strengths and send them over images that they are most likely to be able to classify correctly. So I mean, there is a lot of machine learning in here that it's actually under the hood. I will say it's not as shiny as the detection and the species distribution maps, but it's super useful, because without that we don't get good data to train the rest of our models. All right, and this was part one about the data collection, and I would like now to move to part two, that it's more about what can we do to process this data and create information that is actually useful for conservation specialists or rangers. And I know I'm probably stepping on many things that have been saying so far by Sylvia, by Ben. I don't know which topic have been covered by whom. Alex Mathis for sure, he has talked about behavior and pose estimation. So I'll try to keep it in my drone little corner, but it kind of integrates all this. So let's go back to Namibia. So you remember we had this beautiful view of Kuzikus, our drone taking images, and the thing that we want to do is basically this. Okay, we want to detect and localize. So which means we want to put a bounding box around every single one of these beautiful animals. By the way, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them. Yeah, I'm very happily disturbed during my talk. Yeah? Okay, since this is week 3, I guess you have heard a lot about deep learning, and you have been, coding a lot of things with the tutors. So I don't really have to explain what a ResNet is. What I want to show you is what I did with Benjamin. So I mean, basically every work you see in this talk has been done together with Benjamin. So you can also ask him a lot of nitty-gritty details later on. And so the story is that we enter with an image taken by the drone, like this one. And at the end of the day, we want to have a map of animal probabilities, where everywhere that is bright means that we have a probability that is very high, so like 100%, whereas black, we know that there is no animal. As you can see, it's pretty roughly downsampled from 500 by 500 to 32 by 32 by following the ResNet structure. You could make it higher resolution. It just makes your network bigger, and you probably also need more training samples to ResNet. So the story is okay. Are we there? Yeah. I'm not sure, because if you remember before, I told you we had roughly 1,000 animals, so it would be exact 1,183 in 654 images that then you can chop into your 26,000 sub images. So the 654 are the big shots, which means that we have 700,000 animal pixel, and that number that I don't even know how to pronounce in English. So it's very big. So we have a lot of background, so we don't have a lot of animal data. So if you basically train a model just naively from scratch, or even starting from ImageNet, as we will see, well, it's not gonna work very well. It's basically predicting nothing. And so we came up with a number of tricks, let me call them tricks, to make the model predict better. And I will say they're logical in a sense, but it was necessary really to go through all of them and see that they all actually contribute to the model to work better. So the first one is model pre-training, which is something that I'm sure you have seen in these 2 weeks. So you start from a model pre-trained on another task, which is very often ImageNet, because it's a big data set out there for everyone. And then you just use the annotations you have to tune the weights a little bit so that they learn about your problem specifically, rather than airplanes and trains and the like. The second one is also an all-time classic. It's called class weighting. So the classes that happen the most, you weight them down. The classes that are rare, you weight them up. In this case, we have just 2 classes, animal, non-animal, which makes that we give a lot of weight to the animal class and very little weight on the background. 3 is curriculum learning. And with curriculum learning, basically, we started by using only the images where we knew there were animals, and disregarded all images where there was no animal at all. Because by doing that, you make the task simpler for the model. So the model always have to give you a high probability somewhere in the image. While we have seen before that most of the images have no animals, which means that if you start training with the whole data set, very often there is nothing to be predicted. So the model tries to predict when there is nothing to be predicted, and it gets confused. So you start with the sub data set, which is simpler, only images with animals, and then little by little you start integrating images where there is nothing to be seen, because your model now knows what an animal looks like, and it's a little bit less ashamed of telling you that there is nothing. And so on and so forth. I mean, going through the 5 is maybe a little bit too much, because I will run out of time. So there is a number of these, but the story is that we applied these 5 tricks to the cubicles data, and we ended up with a model that was performing more or less, I mean, not more or less exactly, like this pink line that you can see here. Okay, so we were detecting roughly 90% of the animals, which is good. With a precision of 20%, which may sound not very good, but actually this means that we had, for finding all the animals, roughly 800 something false positives. So meaning that your model will tell you that there is an animal while there is not. It sounds like not very good, but if you look at the previous state of art on that data set, for getting your 90% of recall, so finding 90% of the animals, you get more or less 21,000 false positive. And 21,000 is a lot, because it means that your ranger needs to verify them one by one. And very often they are in images where there is nothing to be seen. And if you start to have to look through all your data set to verify, you basically destroy all the advantages of having a machine learning model. So the good news is that, I mean, we still work on it a lot, especially Benny. Has Benny arrived? Are you in the room, Benny?
Yeah,
Hey, good to see you. I mean, I don't really see you, but good to see you. Hey, there you are. So you know,
got called out for being late.
no, I never got any attempt of saying anything other than hello. Okay, but jokes apart, so you see, I mean, by keep improving loss functions and more data and augmentation, blah 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 blah, we get to now precisions that are more of the order of 70% for 80% recall. So good times, the model seems to work. And you know, the predictions of the first one, the one with the 20% accuracy, looked a little bit like the blue squares here. And the green squares are the actual locations of the animals, and the red one is the previous state of the animal. Still, there are some mistakes, but they are less spread in space, which is good, and you know, they are less also in numbers, which is great. So it also means that you will not have to verify this style, this style, this style, or this style. So it actually eases the work of a ranger quite a lot. But of course, we needed to have like precise annotations to fine tune the model, and this is maybe not what we want. So in a further research that we presented at Earth Vision, this workshop Sarah was talking about before, we tried to look a little if we could relax a little bit this requirement on precise bounding boxes of the animals. And we find out that, funnily enough, by using basically some weakly supervised learning, which means for an event like that, rather than giving me all the annotations like here, the only thing I was asking was if there was an animal or not. So the answer would have been yes or no. Okay. And by doing that, actually, it was funny because we were able to roughly localize where the animals were by having only this very weak training level supervision. And as you can see here in the middle, so you see here the heat map of animal presence, and this model here has been trained only by a bunch of images where we were asking the people if there was an animal or not. In this one on the right, we started to give 2 or 3 images with precise bounding box, which made it a little bit easier for the model to focus on what an animal looked like. Because sometimes the model likes to detect things that are not animal just because it detects objects, and there are more of the other objects rather than the animal, so it tends to detect them. So with a couple more images fully labeled, you basically tell the model what an animal actually looks like, and then the detection becomes very tight also in space. And that's something that I found very interesting to see, that there was another way to decrease the load on annotators. So you have played the game before on Kahoot, you know how difficult that is. So if the question had been, is there an animal or not in this image, you will have gotten right almost everything. Almost, I say, because everybody got wrong the 0 question. And no, it was the final question, the one that everybody got wrong. Anyway, so you know, all these things seem like nothing, but they actually make a big difference in the practical life of rangers, because you know, a model like the mega detector, which Sarah will have or will present you at some point in the summer school, is actually changing the working day of animal conservation specialists in Idaho, for example, where now people are on par with the image acquirer instead of being a lot behind. And you know, all these strategies, all these solutions are actually, in my opinion, making the difference. And it's not only about detection, there is a bunch of other things that are fun to do. So Sylvia for sure has talked about the thing on the right. So the 3D models of animals, you can do tracking, as you can see these beautiful spots hanging around in the setting sun somewhere in Germany. And you know, and many other things that you have seen in these 2 weeks. And I wanted by no means to be exhaustive, but I wanted to mostly show you the little things that we have been doing using remote sensing and drones. But if you heartbeat for videos or for 3D model, I'm sure you will find your happiness in all this. Okay, but so far everything has been very, very academic. Okay, so we get some data, we label some data, we make some maps, and so how do we close this loop? Because maybe you have seen before when I show you that image, if you've been looking fast enough, I'm sure you have seen, oh my God, he was so lazy, Devis. He didn't even bounding box all the animals, right? But I mean, I did that on purpose. So sometimes we miss some animals. Sometimes we detect things that are not animals, like this beautiful tree up here that in my imagination of this slide became an animal before. But this something is wrong, something is missing, and my dear former collaborators were very happy to work on this. But more than these two people, there is a people who is in the room with you who have been working a lot about this problem, which was to actually try to give to ecologists what they need. Okay, what do ecologists need? Well, often they need to give value to their imaging campaigns for their study. And also sometimes they want to have the results without too much machine learning expertise, which fair enough. You know, we are collaborating, we are working together. We are not trying to take other people's job. Yeah. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have rangers who are really in the field, in the reserves, and they need to monitor their animal population very often. So they need to go out, fly their drones. They don't want to have the images shared on the web, because maybe poacher, if I'm a poacher and I know the images every 2 weeks are out in the web, I become a digital volunteer, you know, and then I know exactly where they are. So, okay, we did it once, but then they were like, okay, we did it once, now you have your labels, please don't share them on the web anymore. Which, I mean, fair enough. I think it's a very fair thing to raise. And this also led us, and in particular Benjamin, during his internship at Microsoft AI for Earth, to develop AID, which is basically our sandbox to do everything we do nowadays, which basically it's a software suite that help us labeling data, running deep learning models, going back to the data, getting more annotation, and going in loops so that the person who upload, ecologists, conservationists, to make the most out of the data, get the prediction, and create models that can then be shared with the whole community. And, you know, very, very short advertisement for AID because it's awesome. I mean, it does a lot of things. So it does image level, point-based, bounding boxes. You can even classify your remote sensing images into something that has nothing to do with animals. And, you know, it had all the standard deep learning models in, but not only the standard one. So he also has the weekly supervised one I presented you before. And the cool thing about it is that it's completely open source. And open source means that you can just, you know, fork it, use it. You can do anything you want to contribute to wildlife conservation with a software suite like that. And it's complementary with the other ones that are around, you know, Mega Detector, Wildlife Insight. So, you know, it's a bunch of software that, you know, a whole community is developing for making a difference for this. And it's starting to be used in many applications. Here, just one example where we collaborated with people at Quest University in Canada, and we counted migratory birds in Western Africa, and we basically, you know, decreased the time for annotation from 3 weeks to a few hours, including training. Okay, this doesn't include all the model development that we had to do, but I mean, in that like real deployment phase, it showed to be quite interesting to use a platform like AID. All right, am I on time? Yeah, I still have 5 minutes. Cool. So, which means that I can move on to the summary, and then we can open the floor for a few questions if you like. So the story is that in this 40 minutes, I showed you, you know, how to acquire some data, developing some cool models to make an empathy calculation. So, well, it was in a way a little bit unidirectional. So machine learning helping conservation. But my title was machine learning helping, machine learning helping conservation, helping machine learning. So we're still waiting for the final part, no, the part where conservation helps machine learning, right? And I've been looking at the program, and I've seen that there is already someone else who have been talking about it. So it's good because I don't have to go through all the basics of hybrid models. But I just wanted to make the point that you, as a bunch of bright minds from ecology, if I understand well, you are all from the ecology field. You know a lot of things about species, about how they interact, about who predates who, and about taxonomies. And all these things currently are not forcedly in the deep learning model we are presenting you. There are some examples, like one that you can see here on the slide, where these researchers use taxonomical relations between plants to classify them better. But it is just the beginning. I mean, we're just looking at very simple taxonomical relation, and there is much more that can be integrated into deep learning model to let them make better prediction. Because if we want to move towards the species distribution models, like you can see here in this paper by Mac Audha and colleagues, well, you can integrate a lot of things about ecosystems, about location, coordinates, time, and all the things can actually help you to have a prediction of where the species feel well about their habitat. That depends on all the knowledge we have about them that comes from years and years and centuries of biology. And this is another example, just to finish up with even more beauty and a couple of pictures of birds. We also have, you know, predation rules and co-occurrence rules that we know about, and this can also be embedded in the network, so that if we predict one species with high confidence, it might also mean that another can be there as well, because this one species needs the other to live. And all these things, for the time being, are not at all in our model. Our model works on observations and learn from observation. And one generic hope machine learning people have is that through data crunching only, all these relations will just show up. But actually, if we know them beforehand, why not using them? And wow, I've been talking a lot, and I think I will stop. And I just put the final cool slide with all the pretty picture of all my friends and collaborators. A couple of them are in the room. Well, I hope you had fun and you saw something interesting. And if you want to talk about remote sensing and conservation and ecology, you can always look me up, and I will be very happy of engage into a discussion with a lot of bad jokes, which is what I always do. But Benny can confirm. Okay, this is it. Thank you for listening. And if you have questions, here I am.
Awesome. Yeah, Carly.
Hi. Do you have you noticed any effects of the drones on animals? Have you done any studies about the effects of because there have been a lot of studies that have shown that drones have negative effects on wildlife?
Yeah, so in Cousicos, we were forced to fly very high. So, I mean, we were asked to fly very high, which means that we didn't notice anything in particular because we were very far, which also made our life a little bit difficult to see them because they ended up being very small. There is a colleague, Blair Costello. I don't know if she has been talking as well at the workshop, but she has been working a lot on getting closer and see how animals respond. And we will start a research program in January called Wild Drone, where one of the big things that we will study is exactly that. So we'll design drones that will fly in specific ways in order not to disturb the animals. So it's it's for the future.
Yeah, Alex. Hiya. Thanks for the talk. So gamification has been used in ecology quite extensively recently, especially in terms of citizen science. And I've been thinking recently, how do we incorporate gamification into a field like machine learning that is so technical and often feels really inaccessible to people who don't have a background in it? And I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
So gamification and crowdsourcing are two things that go hand in hand, but they don't always are used at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I've been seeing quite a lot of research where crowdsourcing was made better with machine learning. So I was telling before about introducing active learning, for example. because if you can crowdsource 1 million images, but if you focus on the 1,000 more interesting for the model, and more interesting is not forcibly those that have more animals, but they are those who help the model learn the most. This is something that has been done a lot. So this is like an interface between crowdsourcing and machine learning. Now, in gamification itself, I don't know, honestly. I don't know. Because my first attempt in gamification, you have just experienced it.
So I've definitely seen a ton of work coming out one way or another that's trying to gamify crowdsourcing for machine learning labeling.
Sure.
So like most of Zooniverse, like originally Zooniverse was to get labels for the data themselves. Now a lot of Zooniverse projects, not all, but a lot of them are looking to get some labels to then train a machine learning model. And trying to, like Devis said, like maybe try to use machine learning to have humans look at less empty images, to then get like them to be more engaged, so that they label more data, like that sort of very rough level gamification I have seen.
Sure.
In terms of
Is it
gamification,
good?
not for labeling, but actually for like the ML itself, I don't know, but that sounds like an interesting thing to try to noodle on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true that, I mean, most of these portals that are around now, like, you know, Wildbook, or they all have a leaderboard. No, how many animals did you tag?
Sure.
So there is this aspect of gamification, but I don't know how to which point ML it's really integrated in the gaming aspect. I think that the gaming aspect is there to motivate people to participate. You can name the whale shark when you are the first to find it, or I'm sure Tanya talked about it, like she always tells that. And yeah, I mean, the game, it's good to help people in. Then there's some ML involved more than that. I wish I would like to know, honestly.
Great.
And I'm like, can we gamify like hyperparameter tuning? It's really boring though, so it'd be hard to get. Yeah, Catherine.
I had a question, super cool talk. I had a question about, at the beginning when we were doing the Kahoot game, I noticed that if I saw a shadow, I had a slightly easier time telling that it was an animal. So I was curious if when you all were flying these drones over, if you optimized for time of day, whether in the morning or late at night when there was maybe shadows to, like differentiate between animal or not animal.
It's a very fair question, and we have tried in the first campaign. We had different flights at different times of the day, and the first work that we did, where we were using some like traditional machine learning, we were extracting features related to the shadow because it seemed to be a very strong descriptor for the animal presence. Yes, but it is also a very strong descriptor for the presence of other things. Yeah. Which can be, you know, dead trees, dirt mounds. I mean, there's mounds they don't project so much, but especially the trunks of the trees, when they fall, they tend to project a shadow. And so it also, the shadow is good for the animals, just good for a lot of other things. And we have been training on midday and predicting on the afternoon. We're trying all the combinations, and we didn't really find a clear winner in the things. So I guess it's still very species dependent, and also dependent on how many confounding factors you have in the images.
Yeah. Have you ever used thermal cameras inside your drones? And if so, how is the resolution with those?
I get that question a lot, actually. The problem is that in Namibia, the thermal camera will pick up mostly background signal rather than the animal signal. Oh. It's something very, very useful in temperate climates or at night. But makes sense. Yeah, air temperature is way too high. Yeah.
Good point.
There's a researcher, a woman named Elizabeth Bondi, who's starting a faculty position at University of Michigan. And she has done a ton of work with thermal cameras on drones in Africa, but they only fly them at night because during the day it's just too hot. So the animal is not actually any hotter than the background, so it's kind of just like a mess. Yeah.
So in this workshop, we're also in these little reading groups, and in like the remote sensing focused reading group, we've read a handful of papers where the authors use these super complex neural network architectures, and compared to like a random forest or something, it's like, a 2% difference in accuracy. So I'm curious, like as somebody who's an ecologist who works a lot with remote sensing data, that seems like not worth the effort most of the time. And so I'm curious what you see the most valuable applications of deep learning in like the satellite remote sensing sphere are.
That's a very
Called out.
The problem for me is that up to some point, you cannot use this standard, traditional, old school, call it as you want. But I mean, at some point, you have so much data that you cannot train this model right anymore. And I think that's for me the biggest justification to move into deep learning, is that we have the amount of data necessary to train something that is actually robust and that can potentially, move across geographical areas and things like that. And this is something that with a super vector machine, for example, when you're limited to 1,000 training samples, 2, 5, if you have a big machine, 10,000, I mean, it gets difficult at some point to train something of the size that is necessary to go to this type of scaling. So I don't know, to my eyes, this comparison is not super interesting per se. I mean, it was interesting at the beginning because we were using the deep networks on the same data we were using anything else. But now we're just working on data of a completely different scale, where those approaches are difficult to justify. I would say this would be my argument. But I agree with you that the complexification of methods that I see in those publications is completely unnecessary. And I have
So,
yeah.
So Devis, along those lines, then at what data scale for remote sensing specifically do you think that a deep learning model is the right way to go? Because I mean, yeah, like, just very practical rule of thumb, if someone comes to you with a smaller data set, what do you recommend they do?
I don't know. I mean, it's so problem dependent. I think the choice of sensor is almost more important, because depending on the problem you're studying, you will choose the right sensor. The right sensor will have a certain resolution, and at that resolution, you will then make the jump on the right model. But if you want to do something global scale, for example, you cannot go on a 50 centimeter imaging. First, it doesn't make any sense. And secondly, I mean, the computational effort required is just insane. So I will say, take your application, think at which scale the prediction makes sense, find the right sensor, and from there get to your conclusion. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a satisfactory answer, but
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I feel like actually it's like, I'm not really a remote sensing person, but I feel like it's the type of thing where people always come to me and say, well, how many images per class do I need? And I'm like, it's completely dependent on your problem. There is no answer to that question.
as many as you can get, no?
Yeah, but also like not even as many as you can get in the camera trap space. No, I do not need 10 million images of deer. It's not gonna help anymore.
Fair enough. It's true. I mean, how many images of the same type of land cover do you need? But it opens a lot of interesting questions about few-shot learning and rare class detection and things like that. I mean, we haven't covered this at all. But for me, I mean, the beauty of remote sensing is that in the end, you have an eye on the sky that sees the same thing every 5 days. You have an image, or I mean, if you accept lower resolution every day, every 15 minutes. So I mean, you can really like look at something in a complete distant way without need of anything walking in front of it, like probably the camera trap story. And then you can study a bunch of things with that. You can study, you can study water, forest, cities, and ecosystems. I mean, it's really a type of data that is very versatile, no?
Yeah, and it gives you scale that you cannot get with anything else.
Mm.
But I think, I don't know, maybe I'm preaching to the I just feel like I'm a broken record and I always say the same thing, but I just am so excited about trying to find ways to combine what's good about all these different types of sensing technologies, because there just is no like sensor to rule them all. There's no such thing as a sensor that gives you everything you want. And remote sensing gives amazing scale, but kind of crap resolution. So, and you can't see under the trees, and you can't see individual animals unless they're huge. So how do we combine them?
Yeah, that's exactly the story. The right sensor, the right problem, and the right scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does this improve with the increasing resolution of the satellites now, or is it there's only so far it can go anyway?
Oh, I mean, I think
there are problems you can study now that you could not study 10 years ago. But bigger resolution doesn't mean that you can solve everything with it.
I mean, you're like Ben Weinstein will tell you, you can identify individual tree crowns at 10 centimeter resolution, but at lower resolution than that, it becomes nearly impossible to delineate individual tree crowns. And even at 10 centimeter, it's pretty hard. But you still can't see what's under the canopy for any of those things.
You need LiDAR for that.
Yeah, and even with LiDAR, like all the stuff I've seen that's like looking under the canopy with LiDAR plus hyperspectral is like very nascent.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, maybe 2 more questions? Yeah, Tarun?
So you said in the towards the end of your slides, you said conservation needs ML. I'm just curious as to like, are these park rangers in this park that you talked about in Africa, like, are they using this drone system, and like, what are they using it for? And also you said like before you had machine learning, people were doing everything like manually. So were they like literally going and like counting animals? And if they were doing that, then like certainly they do more than just like counting animals, right? Like was this like kind of like their biggest need as opposed to like tracking poachers or something, or like how is this system being used basically?
So let's say I cannot speak for all the parks in Africa. I can just speak for the 1-2 parks I work with, which are Kuzi and Olpejeta in Kenya. And these are 2 parks where indeed, in both cases, they are really research oriented. So, you know, I'm probably speaking to a public that already wants to try stuff. What happened before we started this whole adventure in Kuzikus is that they were hiring an helicopter, putting 4 people in the helicopter, fly for 2 hours. When they see animals, record them, come back with a number, multiply kilometers flown by size of reserves, and this was the number. So, I mean, in terms of accuracy of census, I think what we're doing is relevant. It's not perfect at all, but it reduces, you know, the uncertainty quite a lot. Now, for the poachers, imagine you're going with an helicopter to count the animals. You fly over a poacher's camp. What happens? Well, they take off the bazooka and fly away. So I think it's also safer for people to do that remotely than to do that in that way. At least this is the type of, you know, feedback we got from the rangers. It was like, it's very dangerous to be out there to do that. Now, will this become the rule everywhere? I don't know. Are people getting super excited about it? Yes. So time will tell.
Yeah, I read a statistic once that like more wildlife biologists die in low-flying aircraft than almost any other way, like doing these like flight-based surveys, or like things like trying to trank an animal like out of the side of like a helicopter. Like these things are just really dangerous. So moving to something that is a drone seems really good, but the thing is, it's not like for free. Then you need someone who can fix the drone. You need someone who can fly the drone. You need the permits to fly the drone. Right now in Kenya, it costs, I think, like $100 per day to have your drone in the air. There's like, they basically think the Kenyan government like instituted that, and so now it's like really unclear for a conservation agency if that's like even worth it. You need to get a drone pilot's license, which is just as an airplane pilot's license. So like, and then everyone who does drone research in Kenya is basically moved to Uganda or Namibia because they have looser laws. And so it's kind of this weird thing where it's just really not that straightforward. There's geopolitical issues and anyway, maybe I guess one more question and then we can let Devis go if anyone has anything. Okay. Awesome. Devis, thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for listening and for staying. I mean, you have a long day ahead. I just have pizza to bake. But
He just has pizza.
Thank you so much, Devis.
okay.